Holy Gospel according to Mark, the 12th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
As Jesus taught, he said, "Beware of the scribes who like to walk around in long robes and be greeted with respect in the marketplace, and to have the best seats in the synagogues and places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses, and for the sake of appearance say long prayers. They will receive their greater condemnation." Jesus sat down opposite the treasury and watched the crowd putting money in the treasury. Many rich people put in large sums. A poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which are worth a penny. Then Jesus called his disciples and said to them, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the treasury. For all of them have contributed out of their abundance, but she out of her poverty has put in everything she had, all she had to live on." The Gospel of the Lord. Be seated. Beware of the scribes. The gospel reading for today begins with Jesus teaching in the temple. He and the disciples have now finally made it to Jerusalem. Beware of the scribes. It sounds like a warning. Jesus calls attention to the actions of the scribes, but it seems he hardly needs to do so. The scribes already do a fine job of calling attention to themselves. It's unlikely that the scribes escape anyone's notice. Their special garments denote their authority and make them easily identifiable in public. And the scribes like to be greeted in the marketplace. They like to be observed in the best seats of the synagogues and at places of honor in the banquets. And in those places and moments of visibility, the scribes seek to increase their notice as they say long prayers for the sake of appearances. I suppose we can imagine who the scribes might be today. It takes nothing to call to mind those who put themselves center stage, seeking the spotlight. So much to say, but really saying nothing at all. Beware of the scribes. I suspect Jesus' warning is less about the scribes' behaviors and more about the power of those behaviors to distract from what really needs to be seen. All along this journey with Jesus and the disciples to Jerusalem, we have witnessed the disciples on more than one occasion being distracted by the lure of greatness, the desire for glory, wanting to occupy the best seat. That which appears respectable, honorable, and faithful in the light of the marketplace casts a long shadow. And that shadow threatens to swallow up from sight what Jesus wants his followers to notice the most. The scribes devour widows' houses. The needs of the least in the community are consumed and disappear from view as the scribes seek to garner attention and serve only themselves. Overshadowed, then, the widows, they slip out of sight. They're rendered unnoticed, unseen. But Jesus does not lose sight of the widows. His warning to beware the scribes places the forgotten widows right in the forefront of the crowd's awareness to those who have come to hear him teach. And those who would be Jesus' followers must beware the scribes in order to look past them, in order to see the widows, not only see the widows, but welcome them and serve them as they would welcome and serve Jesus. The scribes seem to follow only themselves in their ravenous appetite for respect and honor. And so we might hear Jesus rephrase his warning in this way: beware of following yourself. Take caution of the things you do for the sake of appearances. Watch out for what your hunger for greatness can distract you from seeing. Jesus moves now to another place in the temple. He himself is taking up watch. He intentionally sits across from the temple treasury box to watch how the crowd puts their money into it. Many rich people are putting in large sums, each one stopping by the box for minutes at a time and dropping in coin after coin after coin. Like the scribes, their lengthy pauses at the box are perhaps meant to allow others a chance to count the coins and take note of their wealth and their appearance of generosity. That amount which they contribute is not at issue so much. Their contributions will still be used for good to serve the poor, despite their self-serving intentions. But it's how they give, not how much they give, that Jesus is watching. They've forgotten that the collection box is not about them at all. Now a widow comes forward to the temple treasury box, and she places her 2 coins in the slot. To those who are in line before her, those who come after her, she's an invisible part of the community. She's a woman without a husband. She's poor. The exact person for whom that collection box is meant to serve. And she slips through the line unnoticed by the others, except perhaps maybe as an object of pity. If she had not come to the temple for worship, would she have been missed? A slight brush of her hand over the box is all it takes to throw her coins inside. Her action is imperceptible. Her 2 small coins attract no attention at all as they land unseen atop those larger sums, those noisier sums in the treasury. If she had not put the coins in the treasury box, would they have been missed at all? Jesus sees this widow. Jesus sees her drop in her 2 small coins, and he calls to the disciples so that they will also take notice of her too. Jesus has seen the others and their larger sums. Of course, he cannot help but see them. He sits to watch them all. But in this widow who has come to do nothing more than add a penny to the treasury, Jesus sees that for which he has been watching and hoping to see. Truly, I tell you, this widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the treasury. See the scribes, many who are first will be last. See this widow, the last will be first. Does this widow notice the attention she has suddenly attracted? Is she embarrassed and hurrying off to escape the eyes of Jesus and his disciples? What she does is not remarkable at all to her. This widow has not come to the temple to receive notice. Her faith, her trust, not her money, is what she has placed into the box. Whatever she has is not hers. God sustains her life. She leaves her life in God's care. And Jesus sees her, and he sees what she does, and he calls for the disciples and for us to see her too. Is the warning about the scribes still vivid enough in their minds? Does the scribes' behavior contrast sharply with the widow's quiet and humble and true act of service? For all of them have contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, has put in everything she had, all she had to live on. I often make comments on what the Greek word actually was written in the original text and the choices that can be made for the translation. But here, this last phrase in Greek, halon ton bion autos, it means literally her whole life. And that's spot on. Her whole life. It brings a different understanding to what Jesus sees in this widow, to what he wants the disciples and us to see in the actions of the widow. In giving her whole life, she holds nothing back. She bears witness to her total trust and reliance on God. Can the disciples do that? Can we? Probably not. Not all the time. Not everything we have. Because we trust in other countless things. Our sense of security connected to our finances, our personal worth and values, often based on the appearances that we put out into the world. Our best life presented on social media, but our vulnerabilities, our struggles, our needs remain hidden. We may try to not make those distinctions, but we know others do, and we fear their judgment. But Jesus knows our fears and our struggles with the difference between what is truly enough and what the world teaches us is enough. And that's why he points to this widow for us to see and to notice. Jesus reminds us to welcome and embrace the image of this widow, to embrace what we can be when we live in and through him. The security of being grounded in our identity first and always as a beloved child of God. That has the power to set us free. To set us free to live and trust in God, to serve and to give. I'm reminded of the people in Marindi Parish and the way that they collect the offering on Sunday. There is a table and then there's 3 baskets, and each one of them going to different parts of the ministry, just like we might designate on our offering envelope how to divide up the funds. But then also on that table, you will see bags and baskets and bottles, a bag of beans, a basket of bananas, a washed out Sprite bottle containing some sort of white liquid that I finally realized was milk. Giving what they have because everyone has something to give. A sacrifice of thanksgiving, of praise, of faith, and of trust. At the end of that service, they go out into the church yard, and all the items for the offering are brought to auction. And those who have the cash then, or the shillings to do so, bid on those items. Oftentimes those items are given away to someone else. When we were on our trip, we had a driver who was responsible for us quite a bit of the time, more than we actually thought we would have a driver. And it's customary then to give a little bit of a thank you, sort of a tip to that driver. He had nerves of steel, I tell you. Those roads are not for the faint of heart, especially in the mountains. And Stephanie and I noticed that the person who was buying an awful lot of the items at the auction was our driver. And of course, only we could know about the extra money in his pocket from our gifts of thank you to him. And that he was quietly purchasing those auction items, giving back his thanks to God. A quiet act of faith. Perhaps others come to mind for you. The quiet lives of faith that go unseen by most, but that you see, that impact you. Perhaps maybe a veteran who humbly accepts gratitude for what he or she knows was done from a sense of duty, a response to the benefits of freedom, a calling to something greater than themselves. Or one of the saints in your life, perhaps one of those whom we remembered last Sunday, the ones who have impacted your faith by witnessing their complete trust and love for Christ. A wandering preacher from Nazareth, of no real means or status, the son of a poor carpenter, comes forward on the road to Jerusalem, teaching in the temple. But the temple authorities do not want to see him. He is put on trial in the shadows, hidden, out of sight. And he hangs dying on the cross, a rejected criminal, an object of pity. Once he disappears into the tomb, will he be missed? Jesus was not devoured in death, but death is devoured in him. And Jesus was not hidden away in the tomb, but the tomb stands empty to reveal him. And Jesus is the one who put in everything he had, his whole life for us, his whole life for the sake of the world, a servant to all. And Jesus calls to us and says, "See this widow and follow me." Amen.